not involved in the crisis of his time, of him it can be said he never truly lived.
Our similarities are such that my traumas may have come from before combat, but their traumas are so close to the same. It may have nothing to do with combat. It's trauma in general, right? So it's just being human again, and looking back on that and saying, we don't need all these labels. It doesn't matter that you were a soldier. It doesn't matter what you did. It was, you have these traumas, and you're a human. And we need to talk. Hey, what's going on, Team Trek family? Welcome back to another episode. I'm excited about tonight. I've got an awesome guest. She is a U.S. Army combat veteran, spent some time in Afghanistan. She's an entrepreneur. She's a mother. She's a wife. She's a friend at Team Trek podcast. So it is a pleasure to welcome Haley Dunkin. How are you?
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. We've been talking about getting together for about a year now, so finally we get the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming out. So just to let the audience know, right, you came out from South Carolina. How was the drive there? South Carolina to Florida?
It was great. Straight shot. It was nice to see all the scenic routes and driving through Georgia, Alabama, all of that. So it was a nice, easy ride compared to what I usually have to when I go home.
So upstate New York.
Yep. Being
home. So yeah, definitely a different trek going up north. And although we did get some snow here just a couple of weeks ago, so we definitely got that spell of cold weather.
Yeah.
So the winter exists in Florida. So anyway, well, welcome. Haley, do me a favor. You joined the military right out of high school. Mm-hmm. What was it that influenced you to make that decision? Like, where did that come from?
I had that deciding factor of college or military, and everything led up to my life of choosing, the hard way out instead of taking the easy way out, most people would say. And I decided to choose the military versus taking the hard way out in my vision at that time.
Right. Expand on that. Hard way out. What do you mean by that?
So, you think like, okay, after high school, go to college, right? Go to college. It's the easy way. You get the degree, get the job, make the money, have a happy life. That wouldn't have been my case. I would have worked a full-time job, taking care of my mom, trying to juggle sports and juggling school. So that didn't seem like a light at the end of the path for me. So I said, well, I can do all that and join the military and have one decision to make at the time. And if school comes around, I have that option later. Okay,
so the military, for most people, it's generally comes from like a generational decision. Was your mother in the military or anyone in your family? What made you think military?
So military, my mom brought it up one day, must have saw it on TV and said, hey, join the reserves, you'll get free college. And never thought of it again until I saw the recruiter sitting at lunch with my best friend, and him and I decided right then and there that we were going to join the military because we no longer wanted to live the life we were living. So we thought the next best option was to join the military.
Okay, so your mother wasn't in the military though? No one in your family. So where did your mother kind of get that from? Do you have any idea? Like, was she pro-military growing up?
No. So I believe I never met my grandfather growing up. He died when my mom was young. So I think he was in the Navy, and then my grandmother remarried, and he was in the Navy as well during Vietnam. But I don't remember my mom ever being like gun-ho military, anything like that. Like I said, maybe just a commercial popped on or something, caught her attention, and she like jokingly said one day, like, hey, you should join the military, like you'll get free college. And then it kind of just stuck in the forefront of my mind is like, yeah, why not? Why not do that?
So it was because of the financial obligation that you could not go to college without that. So it was an option that existed and a good option for that matter.
Yeah. With school, I would have been able to qualify for government financing, things like that, but still books and food, and again, I would just had to have worked to maintain my lifestyle of just taking care of my mother. So it didn't just seem feasible. You either go to college or you get a full-time job. You don't do both.
So taking care of your mother, why is that? Is your mother elderly? Does she have some, why are you taking care of her?
So I grew up with her always having heart issues. So in and out of the hospital. She was a cleaner, and, we didn't make a lot of money, so we lived off the system, and from homelessness to, staying with family members and things like that. So I would help out. As soon as I turned 14, I started working and helping bringing money in because I was sick of having to turn the power off and freeze in the middle of winter in upstate New York. So I just kept doing that all the time to the point where my senior year I worked 2 part-time jobs and maintained school.
Wow. So it was definitely being looked at as a means to make a life change for you.
And being a full-time athlete, I knew sports was huge. So I qualified for a bunch of scholarships. I had a scholarship right in my face, but it wasn't worth it to continue a full plate. I was drained already by the age of 18 years old.
Wow. Okay, so you and your best friend, you make the decision to join the military, and it's not the National Guard, it's the Army, right? So what was the decision? How did that go?
So that day we decided right there, we drove. He wasn't able to enlist right then and there like I was, able to sign paperwork to start the whole process. But we were able to once he was able to sign and everything. And next was trying to figure out what to do for work.
Okay. And what job did you choose?
I was pushed and coerced to become a cook because it meant I would be able to leave when my best friend left. And our chances of being stationed together were more likely.
Okay. And ultimately that was the hope, right? Like you're not leaving everything and everyone you got a piece of home with you. So I mean that's a huge thing. So you chose to be a cook so you guys can be together. How'd that go? How was basic and everything? Any issues?
So no, just like everything else with school, I strived. I did great. I graduated top in class. I was a PT stud. Being in sports and. Senior year, taking a break from sports, but going to the gym at 4:00 in the morning with my best friend to prepare and be ready for the military. I didn't want to just pass a PT test. I wanted to excel. So I kept that, that's who I was even before the military. So I wanted to continue maintaining who I was in that aspect.
Okay. That's very commendable. So when you're into it, you're in with both feet, and you're going to do the best you absolutely can. So no, I appreciate that. Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. What year was it?
2013.
And tell me about that trip.
So I married a stranger and deployed 10 days later to Afghanistan to a unit I just arrived at, and haven't met any of the actual full unit because they were already deployed when I arrived. It was all Rear D people, so people getting out or people retiring. So it was me traveling alone with one other NCO at the time to a whole different country. Wow.
And I think all of us understand being the new person, being the new guy in whatever aspect, and now you're going to a new country. Mm-hmm. How old are you at this time?
I just turned 19.
Okay, so you're traveling to a new country, brand new 19. Are you excited? You're going to Afghanistan to go fight in a war?
I had all of the emotions because plans changed and I was attached to an infantry battalion. So I go from where I thought I was going to end up to somewhere completely different, being a female in a male-dominated world.
Okay, so now you're attached to an infantry unit as a cook, right? And what's that like? You had no expectation of that. What were you expecting, and compared to what you got?
So I knew instantly I wasn't going to Afghanistan to be one of the cooks. However, I knew I was going to be attached to a different type of unit, but I didn't know who, what, and I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't know if it was my company or not. So it was all very just, you need to know what you need to know, and you just do what you're supposed to. So
yeah, when you're a private, decisions get made for you. It's just the nature of the beast. And so in a lot of cases you do feel like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole, to use a cliche term, but it's drinking out of a fire hose. There's so much coming at you. So you're going to be part of a specialty unit. Okay, tell me about that.
So I was just sitting and getting sent to, Kabul, Afghanistan, and somebody said, here you go, part of the FET team. Like, this is what is happening. This is what's going on. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know who I was seeing. And a bunch of guys showed up, with big beards and in a tan t-shirt, and then, military uniform bottoms. But I didn't know if they were civilian. I had no idea who they were, how to refer to them, or anything. There was just like, okay, here's your new troop. Okay,
so the FET teams, right? Female engagement team, right? So for our audience at home, the way that the FET teams got attached was generally to special operations teams, and in Afghanistan, due to the culture in the Muslim culture, females will engage with females, males will engage with males, i.e. we're not going to put hands on their females. So we will bring female Americans to do that, to help out with the questioning, the things of that nature. So now you go from basic training, I'm a cook, to congratulations, due to probably your PT score and your abilities, they attach you to a special operations team. So how was that?
It wasn't the military that I thought was the military. You're drilled, and even being in war, everything was laxed. I felt like I was just talking to normal people, and it wasn't, soldiers, and we didn't have to be so formal and didn't have to salute and things like that. So I was able to breathe and really focus on what missions I had, instead of living in constant fear as a new soldier of being like, fuck it. Was that a sergeant major that walked past? Was that a colonel? Was I supposed to, like, things like that? Because you don't get it like a pamphlet going into Afghanistan of what to do and what not to do, and coming in as a new soldier versus someone who may have already deployed. Like, you're going by the book, and that's all you know. And then I didn't get to experience the real military yet. I got to experience something completely different, like culturally, through the military.
Yeah, no doubt. And to kind of help send that message home for soldiers that get attached to special operations groups as brand new privates, and then later on they go to the regular army, it rarely works out well for them, because they're two different worlds. The cultures are completely different. There's reasonings behind it, but we won't get into that on this podcast. So let me ask you, you're doing missions as a FET, your PT's there, you're doing great. Where's your head at? Where are you going from here? Because the sky's kind of the limit. They opened up a lot of doors to female soldiers around this time. So where are you thinking?
So I just ran missions, did what I was told, and then I get, I don't get a call, but I get pulled in, and they're like, okay, you're getting moved, you're going to your company, right? We were closing certain spots and certain COBs in Afghanistan, so that area was like cleared, we're good to go. the special force team went back home, you know, and then I got moved with another female. She went somewhere else. And then it was my time to meet, you know, my first sergeant, my commander, because I wasn't obviously a cook. You know, that title kind of just washed away. I was part of headquarters for my company, and I worked directly with my first sergeant and commander and the battle captain of, you know, actual HQ. But I had to switch back on to being formal, knowing who I am, knowing what my position is versus like life or death situation type of thing. And it's like, we're all together as a family. Now it's like, okay, Roger Sergeant, Roger First Sergeant, things like that. I had to switch that back on while being scared shitless of being shot down and, you know, in transportation or just any fucking anything
You're still
to
in
happen.
combat.
Still in
So
combat.
Anything can happen, absolutely. So your military career, it's going somewhat okay. There's some pivots in there. You're doing some things that you weren't necessarily expecting.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying it?
No. I had no emotion. I was numb, and something I was very used to because I did it when I was a child. You dissociate and you are just mission driven. You're doing what you're told. And I wanted to help anyone around me and do what I could. So I, you know, get my E5 who's in charge of me, and I help get him to his E6 with taking correspondence courses and, you know, working and running PT and doing what I can. And, then things change when my chain of command just starts falling apart, and I start seeing all the corruption of it doesn't matter what a life costs as long as I have a nice medal sitting on my chest.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to expand a little bit on that. Were you doing missions that you didn't think you should have been doing? Okay, so yeah, I've heard people talk about things like that where people were trying to get basically putting soldiers in harm's way for their glory, things like that. So that's what you're referencing. I take it.
100%. Being at the time E3, I was in an E5 position. You know, I had to do all of these certain things, and it didn't matter what my rank was. So I would sit on every battle meeting for every mission that needed to be moved because, you know, first sergeant, hey, did you get those notes, things like that. So I knew shit that I wasn't supposed to be knowing, and I keep my fucking mouth shut. And then I hear, let's go, we're suiting up, knowing damn well we shouldn't be.
Who are you talking to about it at this time?
Nobody. I was scared to talk to anybody because everybody was out to get everybody. Later on, I learned that my medic became my best friend during deployment. And he was a person I could confide in. And he also saw a lot of the same corruption, and we were able to just banter back and forth. And then when it was time to be like, okay, he's my E4 in charge of me, like, cut the shit, back to work. But when I needed him and he needed me, we were able to just be like, hey, like, we'll go, you know, he was my battle buddy. We'll go grab chow together.
Okay. So post that deployment, any real trouble reintegrating back into CONUS, being back stateside?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that we all kind of suffer with, right? Just being on edge at all times, checking for a weapon that is no longer on you, constantly just on alert, not being able to sleep because you know you're going to be waking up, you know, at any moment now because you have incoming. That was really hard. Being able to change because you go from completely night and day with time and being able to sleep and regulate sleep and everything kind of just you live in a high stressful situation for so long, you just stay in that. You don't know how to switch it off because nobody gives you the tools to switch it off. if they put you through those bullshit briefings that you're falling asleep through because it's your time to be sleeping because you're on the other side of the world. But they don't give you that time to really slow down and acclimate back in.
So where was your mental health when you returned?
Non-existent. I just kept working to just quiet everything. They tell you don't drink, and I wasn't a drinker, but I was a workaholic, and I would continue working, or I was a gym junkie. PT, before PT I'd be in the gym. Lunch I'd be in the gym. As soon as I get off, I'm in the gym. If I exhaust my body, it'll force me to sleep. It'll quiet the mind.
And what are you training for at this time? So in your mind, you're putting everything into your work, but you're a private, and so you're PTing like crazy. What are you working towards?
My original orders were for 5th group. I was supposed to get sent for airborne school. And in the middle of me transitioning into Fort Campbell,
you got switched.
The command sergeant major came in and handed me papers for 4th Brigade. And I never knew why until I came home and I got a new first sergeant, and he started telling me to work with another lieutenant who was getting ready for Ranger School. And I didn't know why until he was just like, because they're getting ready to send females out and your name's always been on the list.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So you're just busting your ass, getting ready to go to Ranger School and be one of the first females to successfully complete Ranger School is the goal, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what happened? What changed?
Reclass. I was a cook who couldn't cook. I developed a shellfish allergy. I get pulled from, working in the DFAC to working, back upstairs, kind of maintaining that position that I had when I was deployed. And I had my eyes set for master fitness trainer because I said, why not? That ties into what I wanted to do, be a personal trainer and a wellness coach and go into nutrition, which is an option. And I didn't know that at the time. Cook got me to be with my best friend who we both got stationed at Fort Campbell, and he got sent to 5th group where I should have been with him. So I was just digesting and continuing where they needed me to be. You don't have an option.
Okay, so what was the decision maker to then get out?
I was doing the PT test for, to be able to reclass, I needed to pass 3 PT tests. I needed a max 300 every time, and everything hit me like a brick. I hit like a brick. I blew out my knee. I had a torn meniscus. All of my health issues, I started packing on weight out of nowhere. And mind you, my escape was being exercising.
Sure.
So gaining weight should have been impossible. To being told I would never have children because I'm infertile. To you have all these hormonal issues. And then to the point where someone said, we can't do we can't fix your meniscus. We'll have to take it. We'll put you on a permanent profile. You should just med board out. To my whole career falling right in front of me.
So you're getting ready to go to Ranger School, be one of the first females to complete that. And then like a flash of light, your life changes, and now you've got to make some hard decisions. Mm-hmm. Talk me through that. What was getting out like, and how was that?
I was lost, and I didn't know who to turn to at the time. And I ended up having a first sergeant who treated me like I was his own daughter. He had daughters not far from my age, and he took me under his wing because he saw how corrupt our unit was. I called him up one day and I was like, can you meet me and my husband, who just got out at the time? And I said, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to fucking fight this. We're going to do this. Like, I don't have to have knee surgery. I can build up the muscle, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, get out. And I wasn't expecting that because he was my hype man. I was expecting him to be like, yeah, fuck them. You're going to be great. You're going to do the badass. You're a badass. And he was just like, get out. You're worth so much more to this world than you are for this military. And I was conflicted because that's all I ever wanted. I wanted to be something amazing. I wanted to break boundaries. I liked going against the grain. So having someone say like, your career is over, my whole path was changed. I built this entire thing I was going to do, and now it's over in just my first few years as a soldier.
So that's a hard pill. Mm-hmm. Where are you thinking? I mean, what do you have in your mind now? You've got a choice to make, and you've got limited time.
Conquer the world, like my first sergeant told me to.
By way of?
I started a business and I scaled it, and then the health came knocking and, told me, hey, be careful, you're going to die. So I took a step back and realized that I needed to stop living for other people. I needed to live for myself because I had my daughter looking up to me.
So it was through this that you started to realize that it was time for you to take a knee and do some healing yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was your thoughts? Who are you reaching out to for this?
I just started doing some research and found some organizations that catered to, either female spouses, veterans, things like that, and started my healing journey. I completely just cold turkey stopped life to focus just on me and what I needed.
I like how you said that you cold turkey stopped life to focus on what you needed. So mm-hmm. what was that journey? So you reached out to, was it like a counseling group or what was that?
So I started with Service and Soul. They cater to military spouses, but I fell under that umbrella as a female veteran who also, dual. And it just started that journey of what I needed to heal and what I thought I needed to heal.
Okay, so how many days was that? Was it a retreat or?
Nope, so this one was just a 1-day thing, and we did some hypnosis therapy, which was amazing. And I had to talk to little Haley, and that's when everything started to come to the front of what was needed to be done.
Okay, so now it's time for you to get back to know little Haley. What does that even look like? What does that mean?
I didn't know what that meant until I went and did equine therapy, with a horse, and understanding having someone to protect you and what that meant to me, because I was never protected as a child.
Okay, so 2 questions there. So equine therapy, mm-hmm. Is this different than?
Yep. So I found another organization through, channels, resources that I had. And this one was Alliance 180 out of upstate New York.
Alliance 180, okay. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned something about the horse was providing protection that you'd never had before. Can you expand on that?
So you connect with the horses, and they bond to you and they protect you. So they come into you and they let you know that you whatever you need to do, you can, because I'm here to protect you, to let you open up. And that was my first time ever opening up those floodgates. So
horse therapy, animal therapy is one of the therapies that I've heard a lot about, specifically horses, and is it miniature horses that they use as well?
So some programs do. The program I went to it was just full-size horse that they save from racing or abuse or anything like that, and they give them therapy and get them ready to help veterans.
Okay, so it's therapy through the animals, mm-hmm. and it's a bonding thing with those animals. How many days is this retreat?
This one was a 2-day retreat. So it was just another simple, short thing, but an amazing experience that I'll never forget.
Can you put into your own words, mm-hmm. like, how did that help you? I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't really know what doctors say, how it works, but I want to know from your point of view, how did it work for you? How did it help you?
So just, shortly, horses live in the moment, and as a soldier, we're not trained to live in the moment. So being able to put myself in their shoes to be able to create that bonding moment was really hard. I had to just stop and let go. But I was in a safe environment where I was able to do that, to have that horse trust me, and then in myself, trust myself.
When you say let go, what was it that was coming up? Was it just things from the Afghanistan rotation? Was it things from your past that you're trying to let go? You mentioned getting back in touch with little Haley. What I'm still trying to understand.
So at that one, it was little Haley. They don't advise you to go home if you live locally. They want you to stay one night in their space, to be able to decompress. Right, you're by yourself to decompress, and I did. I'm glad I stayed because I was gonna go home, but I unlocked so many things, and all of the emotions hit at once. Anger, all of the pain, all of just the sorrow hit me all at once. And I knew my childhood trauma needed to be healed.
Do you want to talk on some of that childhood trauma? What was going on?
So I, grew up, not, we didn't have a lot of the bare necessities that we needed to just live: house, water, food, heat, things like that. Had my aunt and uncle were that structure to keep me going. But there was times where, it was out of reach for them. So I had a mom who didn't want to have children. She put men in front of us first, and living in a upstate, cold weather space with no heat because we're trying to save money, to getting kicked out of our apartment because my mom wanted to have a boyfriend over. So it was just that constant neglect, to a father who was never around, but when he was around, I was hiding in cupboards so my cousin wouldn't molest me. So I never felt safe. I never had that safe body,
And what about grandparents? Were they in the picture? How was your mother's
when I was
folks?
little? No, when I was little, it was the same way. And going through the Big Red Barn retreat, I learned my mother also had her own suffering as a young child as well, by being abused and being neglected. So she just recreated what she knew. And I knew that I had to heal so I would never recreate that for my child.
So we talk about trauma being generational in a lot of cases on this show, right? And although some of our listeners want to disagree, I think it's very hard to disagree with it. If your mother grew up in a situation where she believes that is normal, that is how you're supposed to be treated, and that's how in turn you're supposed to treat your children, how can you expect anything other than that, right? And so then that's going to get passed on to you.
Yeah.
And in turn, you would expect it to get passed on to your child, but you're starting to realize you don't want to pass that on.
Mm-mm. No, I was numb to the abuse, which is why the military was appealing to me. All of my friends were like, "Aren't you scared of basic? Aren't you scared of this?" And I wasn't scared of anything.
You were so resilient by that point.
Yep. And I thought I would be protected in the military. I thought I would find that family, and it was just as bad.
So now you're finishing up your retreat at, did you call it the Big Red Barn? Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
The Big Red Barn. So it's through Warrior Path, and they're all over the United States. And that one was post-traumatic growth, and that's the best thing that I ever did, because that's what saved me.
So out of these therapies that you went to, and it sounds like there was like 3 different ones that you tried. Would you recommend any of them, all of them? What are your thoughts on that?
I recommend all of them, because there's different points in your life that you need to, went into one thinking, okay, I got to heal losing people and the things that happened in Afghanistan.
Survivor's guilt.
Where it all led up because of little Haley being abused, that these things are what's tying my emotions, tying it down. I needed to start from day one instead of the middle. You don't ever just open the book and you're like, read from the middle. You have to start from the first chapter.
Okay, so it's definitely something that's helped you throughout the years that you've spent. So you would highly recommend it. What did you? So when you left your final retreat, the Big Red Barn, how was your new approach at life? Like, what changed with you, and how did you take on moving from there?
I realized and I learned that I'm gonna struggle, and there's gonna be days harder than others, and that looking at the smaller things that are happening in that moment or in that day, that's all that matters, because tomorrow is a completely different day. We don't need to think about it. We don't need to think about yesterday. So I stopped dwelling. I stopped planning. I started to live in the moment, and that's it, that constant message of my head of they'll be better off without you. Started to go away. I no longer felt that, because those little moments added up to things my daughter looked forward to. So if I wasn't around, they would have never existed.
The way you talk about being in the moment, not dwelling on the past, not being so concerned about the future. And then when you look at your daughter and you put that energy into her, and that's what's going to make the difference. And that's how we're going to be able to change and actually do something about ending this suicide epidemic that we have, right? It doesn't take much to be there for somebody and change their lives. What is it we were talking about earlier? You mentioned 8 minutes.
It takes 8 minutes. So when you need somebody, if I need somebody or if you need somebody, just send a message and say, do you have 8 minutes? Because nobody's going to say I have a gun in my mouth. Nobody's going to say I'm driving off this bridge. But it's easy for us to say, do you have 8 minutes? Because that's life and death. And they're serious.
I think that's a phenomenal approach at it. Do you have 8 minutes for me? Mm-hmm. Save my life. I think that's excellent. Haley, this story, your career, although somewhat short-lived, you went through a tremendous amount during that time, a tremendous amount of growing. What was the thing that you would take from that experience and translate it into today, and how you approach life differently, having lived all those things? What is that gold you would hand out tonight to our listeners?
To learn to struggle well, because there are going to be harder days. But being able to never get to that boiling point makes such a huge difference. We want to keep a heartbeat motion. We don't want to ever flatline it. And I think it's so symbolic, because a lot of us think it's easier if we just allow it to go flat, when there's so much good that we would be missing in that moment, that something shitty's happening. You wake up and you're like, wow, this cup of coffee's really good. I may have slept like shit, but this fucking coffee is awesome today. And some people look at it and they're like, what an odd thing. But that's my new goal, is to tell everybody and anybody who wants to listen to me what I'm grateful for, and to ask you, what are you grateful for? It could be anything, because it helps you see the light. in a very dark place. You never know who you could save by just asking one simple question.
I love how you put that. What are you grateful for? Mm-hmm. One simple question. Wow. Well, Haley, thank you so much from Team Trek family. This was awesome. We hope to see you again very soon. Make sure and check in with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.